and you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Great, sure, thanks. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. My name's Matt DeCamp, and happy to really sort of lead off this breakout session with probably what you may find to be the less fun part, to be honest. Just listening to me as I talk through and introduce really the background behind the Stakeholder Engagement Navigator web tool that's been developed out of the Data Science to Patient Value program here at the University of Colorado. I'm in the Division of General Internal Medicine and also the Center for Bioethics and Humanities. And really over the next 10 minutes or less, I just want to give you a little sense of what we'll describe as the untapped potential of stakeholder engagement for enhancing research. I'll explain 2 unmet research needs for improving stakeholder engagement. And the last part is where I'll turn it over to Kate and Brad, my co-presenters today, to talk about this Navigator web tool we've developed to help you do just that, to improve the way engagement gets done in research. And all these slides, I believe, are available on the conference website. There are a number of references that you might find handy in writing method sections or parts of grants. So I hope you'll feel free to take from those as you see fit. Now, this is a complicated slide. It's a conceptual framework from COPRH, and it basically shows a simple idea, which is that engagement of stakeholders plays a foundational upstream role in shaping how research gets done. And if you look closely, you can see this upstream role in the green box on the left: the who, the what, the when, the how, influence, and principles of engagement really have this cross-cutting influence over determining how studies get done, the types of questions that are asked, how people are recruited, all parts of the research process and these intermediate outcomes, which really do, we think, improve longer term outcomes. That is, things like the goals of research, the impact of research on healthcare, health outcomes, health disparities also, and so on. But just the idea that engagement really is foundational upstream part of the research process. Now you might ask, what's the evidence really that engagement does any of this? And on this slide, it's just to show you that there is a growing body of literature that is documenting how engagement works. So on the left here, a study in Health Affairs, it shows the positive effects of engagement that were evident throughout the entire research life cycle. If you look closely, you can see research design on the upstream, the conduct of research from recruitment through retention, through data collection, data analysis, and then of course also dissemination and implementation of research findings. And all through this table, citations to evidence from the literature that engagement has this effect. And on the bottom of the screen or on this of the slide also, you see a number of citations that really do represent a body of literature surrounding engagement, proving that it works. Now, I said that the potential of engagement is somewhat untapped, and that's because if you scratch beneath the surface of a lot of engagement research, that is research on engagement, rather than being a universally deliberate process, engagement can actually be somewhat idiosyncratic, accidental. Sometimes it relies on the unique interest or expertise of individuals, whether they're investigators or community members or research partners, and so on. And so it's an important reminder from classical work on citizen participation of a more sociological sort. We see here this ladder of participation. And one of the things we often talk about is this idea of consultation. And what a stark reminder that in this sociological literature, consultation with stakeholders is actually considered a form of tokenism, especially when stakeholders' views are not actually incorporated. And many of us in the engagement world, of course, want to see us going higher up the ladder, avoiding those lower rungs of manipulation, avoiding even consultation and getting up to the idea of citizen control, citizen science, really truly patient-driven research. So what do we think is needed to fulfill the potential of engagement to achieve these goals that I'm sort of sketching out for you? Well, there's sort of three things. We need to have comparative evaluation of engagement methods. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one, starting with evaluation. I mentioned that there's a growing body of literature around engagement. And fortunately for us, work over the past decade has led to progress in the evaluation of engagement efforts themselves. Under this mantra, if we can't measure it, it doesn't exist. We now have scales like the patient engagement and research scale. We have quantitative assessments of engagement drawing on community-based participatory research principles. We have PCORI's We Enact tool and many others. This is a website that takes you to a whole repository of tools that can be used to evaluate engagement in practice. So we're actually starting to learn a lot in that box around evaluation. But still, multiple systematic reviews over the past few years have suggested that there's a need to consolidate these measures into core items. And they've also asked questions about the rigor of the items themselves. So we've got a lot there and still a little bit more to do when it comes to this box of engagement. This other part I mentioned of the three boxes relates to engagement methods. Now, we in research sometimes have a knee-jerk reaction to creating advisory panels, having a patient co-I, or even conducting qualitative research or surveys as part of so-called engagement. We actually need to recognize that there's a vast landscape of engagement methods. Here's a toolbox, and we like to think about these engagement methods as tools in the toolbox. Only by understanding this landscape of tools can we overcome some of the more vexing problems in engagement, those being tokenism, for example, by using methods that are able to elicit authentic input and partnerships, by focusing on diversity and inclusivity, by using methods that are accessible and culturally appropriate, and so on. So some work to be done when it comes to engagement methods. And then finally, once we have agreed upon measures of engagement and a sense of the full toolbox of engagement methods, we can pursue this holy grail of engagement in research, and that is comparative effectiveness research on engagement methods themselves to develop a really robust evidence base for engagement. So what do I conclude in this really short intro? Again, there is a growing body of literature that suggests that engagement works and it matters, but there's a need for CER of different engagement methods. And note that this presentation so far has been intentionally vague about which engagement stakeholder we're talking about. I implied patients, families, and communities, but this vagueness suggests that there's another dimension of engagement, that is tailoring engagement methods to different stakeholder types. That's almost a next level conversation about engagement. Now, one effort, as I hinted at before, to begin filling these voids has been funded by the University of Colorado's Data Science to Patient Value program, is the Stakeholder Engagement Navigator, and that's going to be the subject of the rest of the session. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and turn it over to Kate and Brad.
All right, thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this breakout. We intend for this presentation to be somewhat interactive if possible. We were given a nice introduction about stakeholder engagement by Matt, and we'd like to continue this discussion. So I see that we're sharing some slides, and I'm going to open up my chat just in case I won't miss anything. Just one moment. Okay, so we're going to talk about the web tool that we've developed over the past 18 months or so. This particular web tool is intended to be a resource and support to novices and experts alike to maybe have an introduction to what stakeholder engagement might look like for your particular project, but also for those more seasoned and experienced folks that have been doing stakeholder engagement for some time. We hope that this tool speaks to a very broad audience and has something for everybody. So using the stakeholder engagement Navigator is really meant to plan your engagement strategy. And I hope to not do a lot of talking today. In fact, I would hope to get a volunteer, possibly, that had used our tool that was sent out and attached to our presentation as a PDF, a fillable PDF. Can anybody let me know if they were able to use that resource? So it doesn't look like at the moment we have anybody that had used the resource before coming to our session. So is anybody willing to volunteer and help us do a walkthrough of the tool and use your research or your ideas about stakeholder engagement as a way to navigate the web tool?
Someone has to volunteer.
I can give it a shot.
Yay.
Yay, thank you, Rachel. That's great. So I'm gonna ask Kate to go ahead and share our web tool. And this web tool is available on the internet at this time. So in choosing one of the engagement strategies, we would navigate on the right-hand side to find engagement strategies. And Kate will be navigating for us. So Rachel, we were thinking that you could possibly look through this content as our volunteer and make some decisions so that we can demo how this web tool works and gives you input on what strategies might work for your research. So this is sort of an introduction, similar to what was on the last PowerPoint screen. So these are some of the considerations that we'll be making. Purpose, budget, number of interactions, time per interaction, and staffing. So there's a start button down at the bottom that Kate will now take us through. So Rachel, really turning it over to you here, and I'll walk through this tool with you and answer questions and have a dialogue as we walk through it. But if you could read out loud and sort of answer the question, we can go forward that way.
Sure. So the question says, during which stage of your research project do you plan to use stakeholder engagement activities? Planning, implementing, or disseminating? Now, my project's a little weird in that I have an engagement board that is working with 7 different projects, or 6 different projects, but it's up and running, and the projects are all in the implementing stage, so I would select implementing.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for the context. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
If you continue to do that, that would be great.
Okay. Okay, so the next one, looks like here is why do you want to engage stakeholders? Expand diversity. Oh, sorry. Expand and diversify stakeholder outreach. Investigate ways to successfully implement a study based on stakeholder insights, and refine and help implement effective recruitment strategies. I think it's pretty much all of these, but kind of thinking, can I pick all of them?
You can.
All right, then let's do that.
Could you speak a little bit about how your project speaks to each of these selections?
Sure. So expand and diversify stakeholder outreach. I think that the project is trying, the projects are trying to find ways to improve services for veterans who have opioid use disorder, and then those who are in pain treatment. So the projects are wanting to, I think, get the voices of the veterans into them as part of what they're doing. So that makes me think about the expand and diversify stakeholder outreach. Investigate best ways to successfully implement a study. Some of the things that different projects have brought to the group have been things like recruitment letters and surveys, where the veterans who are part of the engagement board will take a look at them and give some really targeted feedback, which those are, I think, some of the best meetings, because they're able to give some very concrete things, and then the researchers come back about every 6 months, and 6 months later, the researchers are able to say, we were able to do what you said, and it's a nice way to make concrete changes. And then the last
No, please proceed.
And then refine and help implement effective recruitment strategies. And just last month, there were researchers there that were asking, how do we get veterans interested in our program that we're trying to implement? And the veterans on the board were able to give them some specific ideas about that as well.
Okay, so that's great. And I will also say one thing as we move on to the next question. We'll have some intermittent polling that the audience can take part in as we go. So just have an eye out for that as well. Please proceed, Kate. Okay. So tell us what you see when we arrive here.
There's a lot.
There
So I think my eye first goes to all those things at the bottom. And I think I'm assuming that when the slider gets moved, different things maybe get highlighted depending on what I'm selecting.
If you could give Kate some direction on how you might want to augment the 3 domains up top, that'd be great.
All right. Well, my budget's pretty low, I guess. We're paying the veterans for their participation, but that's all we have funds for. So we don't have additional funds beyond paying them for their time. Our time per interaction, we get them for 2 hours a month. And then our numbers of interaction, we meet monthly, so 10 plus would be there. It's a 3-year project. And
Okay, and as you made an assumption, and with the data visualization that you were looking at, we can change some of these domains and we get some feedback about what might be an appropriate strategy. So tell us, do any of these jump out as interesting or something that you would like to investigate further?
well, what I'm doing is a stakeholder panel. So I would be curious to see what you have over there.
It looks like the tool landed on what you're doing.
Exactly. So I guess I'm doing what I should be doing. Yeah.
Is there, where would you like to go from here, Rachel?
Let's see. I think I would be curious to see what you have with more information.
Okay, wonderful. So I would like to say, you know, that you moved through this very confidently, very quickly. You answered the questions without hesitation, and you kind of knew where you were going. I think it's interesting that you chose one of the strategies that you are working. So what was your mindset when you wanted to, are you here to confirm your assumptions, or sort of tell us about why you wanted to come to a strategy you were already using?
Yeah, that's where I would start, but I definitely would not stop there.
Okay.
I think starting there, it would be to expand my understanding of it and to see, is what I think this is what you also think it is? What else can I learn about what I'm already doing, and what other strategies can I use in what I already have? And then from there, I would probably go and look at other things to bring in new ideas.
Okay. Wonderful. So Kate, can you show us this form as it exists for this strategy? And please, if we have any
Yeah, well-
questions about the content, did I just interrupt someone's question? Okay.
Yep, that was just me, Brad.
Okay, no problem. So we have some different data visualizations here. You can see where we highlight workload. It's a medium type of workload that we see during implementation. That this isn't the easiest thing to do, but it's also not the hardest. So it lands right in the middle for workload, and some appropriate applications, key characteristics, resources needed. So this is kind of feedback from the pool of strategies, as we called it during the design and development process for this. We went down to the lower side of the resources on the money. So we get some feedback on that choice here, and that is that we really should think about having some resources for food while folks are visiting with us in this engagement strategy, and also travel, so that we can support our community colleagues in doing the work. Do you have any questions about this form, Rachel, in particular?
No, I'm curious if you click on the how to, do those bring up more information for each of those steps, or is that just a list? It's just a list of things.
It's just a list.
I was going to jump in, and I would imagine someone like Rachel may want or wonder if there are additional, references or resources or examples. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. So we can go in all the way down at the bottom. There's other resources and references that we can look into to get even more information. So this is a tool that doesn't claim to be exhaustive by any means, but we do want to give you a lot of avenues with this tool in your exploration of what stakeholder engagement might look like for your project. So in the spirit of time, I wonder, Rachel, if we can go back to the tool, the pool of strategies, and perhaps you could pick a different one that you've not used and that you're not familiar with.
Sure. How did you get back, by the way? Did you just click the back button, or was there a back, the back button on the browser?
So it'll pop open a separate
okay.
tab for you.
I see.
So you can have, if you're like me, I always have a million tabs open. So you can collect all your tabs over here to go back later.
And that's a really great point, I think, Rachel, because then you can open up multiple strategies and compare them using your internet browser tabs.
Well, I think I'm kind of curious about the deliberative polling that's grayed out over there.
We should ask her, just so we're clear also, like, how do you interpret the colors and the colors and the methods that appeared on that page?
So I assumed the dark blue would be the things that were most in line with what I'm doing, and then the darkest would be the things that I guess the darker the more appropriate, and then the gray would make me think this isn't something that's appropriate for what you're doing, but it's not something I've heard of before.
Okay, and you're right on there. I think it could work. This could work for you because we remove the strategies we just don't think will work based on your selections in the sequence of questions and then how you toggled each of the domains. So this is something that may work, but it's less obvious how it might work, I would say. So if we can go into more information and let us know how to navigate the more information, Rachel, so you can tell us what is of interest because you're unfamiliar with this strategy at this time.
Yeah, well, I'd take a minute to read what's at the top.
I really like, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt because we got a really nice comment in the chat. Jess said one suggestion would be to incorporate how to do virtual connections over stakeholder engagement. I think that's one, needed, and two, I don't think it's really going to go away either. All of us have kind of acclimated to a different style of engagement, and some of those styles or strategies probably won't go away. So back to you,
Yeah,
Rachel.
I will add that on some of these, we do have a variations section, and we don't have that for all of them. But on a few, we do talk about ways that the method could be used virtually. But I think there's a lot of these that could be used virtually that we don't have that consideration for because it wasn't an issue really before this year. But I think that would be a great addition. Sorry, Rachel, you can go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I think I would just skim through most of this and my eyes go to the less useful for. And I guess I'm not really sure what gaining information to be used at the individual level means. Like, does that mean working with one stakeholder?
I think that's a good interpretation, that this strategy, when there are fewer people that you're working with, that the information you're going to garner may not meet the individual needs as well as it might meet community needs.
Yeah, since deliberative processes tend to be a little larger and a little more community based, you may not get as much in-depth information about an individual's experience as you would with a panel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I wonder if others in the, I don't know if anyone else in the breakout has, comments or questions or for either Rachel or us about where we are at the moment with this tool and what we've gone through. Feel free to jump in. Like Brad said, this is to be as interactive as possible.
I think there's a really nice sidebar in the chat about virtual engagement strategies. One comment was that they promote inclusivity, and that might be because of less of a resource necessity. Perhaps I could be wrong there, though. I guess you would need the technology to engage, but you wouldn't need as much time or travel. So a lot of these choices are about balancing the need of the project in the community that you're actually working with. So I think those are really nice examples of considerations to make when selecting a strategy. Excuse me. So Rachel, because you were interested in this strategy, did it meet your need for your project? Is it relevant?
I think it could be if we had something specific to work through. It makes me think about how we've talked about some kind of side projects that we could do, such as pulling together more guidance for the researchers who are coming to the board about how could the researchers prepare well for the board. And it seemed like this might be a good strategy if we wanted to create something like that. At first glance, anyway.
Great.
Like that, I think at the top it said something about like guidelines or suggestions, or was something, or a set of recommendations. Yeah, that's what made me think of that.
So these information sheets are able to be printed and downloaded via computer. So you could scribble notes on them or share them with colleagues as well, to pass between you and your research colleague or your community colleague for that matter, when you're getting input at an early stage from your community engagement colleagues. So this resource can be used in that manner as well.
Yeah, that's really neat. That could be something helpful for us in as we're figuring out how to move forward with our board, because we have this 3-year project, this amazing group of people together, trying to think about how do we keep going. But if we get funding to work on something like that, we want to be able to pay them for any extra time that they're putting in. Like this could be something I could print out and put in a packet. I think it's, I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing this page, but I think it's written in relatively plain language. It doesn't seem super technical. So it does seem like something that could be shared with community members as we're talking with them about how do we want to move forward with the group.
I think that's an exceptional use case to share with partners and have brainstorming sessions around several different engagement strategies, and then have a dialogue on what makes sense with your partners. I think that's a brilliant use case. So I think our session does end at 2:35. And so if we could go back out to the pool of strategies, and I want to allow Kate and Matt to mention anything that I've neglected to show our audience today, and then also encourage any questions from the audience before we have to sign off.
Yeah, I'll just quickly go back to the homepage here. We do have a quick intro video. This is kind of a placeholder video for a more professional video that we will have made this summer, but it gives a brief how-to of how to use the website, as well as some background information on stakeholder engagement. You can access all of the strategy fact sheets from the sidebar, so you don't have to go through the tool if you're looking for a specific strategy and you already know what you're looking for. And then we do have some additional resources under the Education Hub, some more foundational information about stakeholder engagement, and then some more in-depth information, as well as a bit of background about how this tool was created, and a contact us section and a glossary over here on this hamburger menu with some terms that maybe you weren't familiar with or need a refresher on.
I'm just going to add one last thing, if there aren't any questions, that one of the things we've even found useful for ourselves using our own tool, or Navigator, I should say, is these categories known as tools here, which, unlike a full-blown method of engagement, many of these tools are little tips and tricks and techniques that can be used within another engagement method. So thinking about Rachel, there are tools in this section that could be used within the setting of an advisory panel to sort of create a new activity, a new way of engaging a panel that you already have. And so that's just something I would highlight, and something that, like I said, we've actually used it ourselves in a couple of projects over the past 6 months.
Rachel, thank you so much for volunteering.
Yeah, of course. I attended y'all's session, I think last year. I don't know if you had it 2 years ago also, and it's cool to see how this evolves.
Oh, you were part of some of the user-centered design work then.
Yes.
Wonderful. That's great to come full circle and cool. That is so neat. So thank you for attending. And yeah, please use this tool in whatever way makes sense for your group. You can assign it as homework, print out the sheets, refer it to your colleagues and your friends and your community partners. Really hope to see use of this tool, and the 3 of us can always be contacted for questions or input, or even it would be neat to hear how different people use the tool. And I think with that, we're at time. Have a wonderful conference and take care, everybody.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Kate. Good to see you both.
Thank you.